Next rifle we'll consider is a rather rare rifle. It's called the model 1941 Johnson. This was designed by a fellow named M1 Johnson. And M1 Johnson was an interesting character. He was a Boston lawyer and a major in the Marine Corps Reserve. In the 1930s, the M1 Garand was suffering some significant problems and came under a great deal of criticism through the general press. Even the NRA criticized it. M1 Johnson thought he could do better. So he designed this rifle. It was not successful in the fact that after much testing, it was found to be somewhat inferior. Beside that, the M1 Garand was already in production. But an interesting thing occurred which would never happen today. Congress actually convened and went out and test fired the M1 Garand and the 1941 Johnson. So you can imagine the senators out on the firing range trying to decide which rifle was best. Never happened today. The other thing that was very unusual about this rifle, it was recoil operated. All the rest of these semi-automatic rifles that we're looking at are gas operated. This was a recoil operated weapon. He did manage to sell some to the Dutch, and they were to be used in the Dutch East Indies. However, by the time the Dutch was ready to take possession of these, the Japanese had already overrun the Dutch West Indies. So, M1 Johnson, being a Marine, went to the Marines and talked them into buying some of them. One of the unique features about this rifle is you could actually depress an indent right here and take the barrel out. So it broke down. It made an ideal paratrooper rifle for the Marine paratroopers. Interestingly enough, it was also acquired by the OSS, the predecessor to the CIA. OSS being the Office of Strategic Services. Apparently the CIA had a number of these in store, and these were actually issued to the invaders of Cuba during the Bay of Pigs. So this rifle has a really interesting history. Being recoil operated, the other problem with it was that it wouldn't work with a regular bayonet, because when you add weight to the rifle barrel that recoils, then the rifle wouldn't work. So he came up with a special bayonet. One of the big things that was a tremendous advantage on this rifle, though, was the fact that it had a 10-round rotary magazine. The big problem with the M1 Garand, as we'll look at here in just a second, was that you loaded it with 8 rounds, and then until you fired the last round, you couldn't reload it. On this particular rifle, you could actually load rounds 5 at a time with a stripper clip, or 1 at a time through a side loading gate, even with the round in the chamber and the bolt closed. Getting back to the bayonet problem, that's the bayonet that he came up with. Most unusual bayonet that the U.S. has ever had. The Marines hated it. They called it the tent peg. Here's a picture of it actually attached to the muzzle.